Hello everyone and welcome back to Scylla's Pockets, and today we're going to be a bit more low-key because I have a cold and it's very annoying. But I realized that I haven't even told you guys how I finished off the month of September. It's been a while, don't worry about that. So I thought we could dive right into that and I can show you my wrap-up parts for the month of September. If my camera could cooperate, because we've had a bit of a row for the past half an hour. Moving on. So I'm gonna start with a book that I'm currently still reading because I started it on the last day of September and I was honestly already losing hope that I was going to finish it. And I'm obviously talking about Empire of Grass by Tad Williams. This is the second book in the Last King of Ostenard series, the second series to be set in Ostenard, a world that Tad Williams created. I am about 100 pages in, which is not a lot for a book like that. I will be continuing this in October. I'm actually planning on finishing it for my massive October TBR. Link to that video up above and down below. Because I can do that, actually. So that's really nice. But yeah, this massive chunky boy. I'm enjoying myself so far. It's very different from the original series, but I was expecting that. Because the original series is very much like your typical hero, like from a different family and whatnot. Like, you know, small unassuming hero who then gets to save the world and whatnot. This is very different because of course we have very different power positions, but I personally really like what he's doing with it so far and I'm really intrigued to continue on with this series. After that, I'm gonna put him down because he's very heavy, but after that we're going to go over my two DNFs real quick. I have this thing where I draw from a TBR box every once in a while. Most of these are books that I got for free or very little money, and for September I did that with my German books. I have since then added an English box of books as well to that kind of concept. And the reason I'm very easy or very fast to DNF these books is because the entire point is to try them out, give them a chance, and then toss them away if I don't like them. So I have very little qualms doing so because I paid very little money, if not no money for them. I tried both of these. I liked one more than the other, but I didn't like it enough and I was having a super hard time reading it and I was not enjoying myself whatsoever. Every time I wanted to pick it up I was like, do I have to? Which is a surefire sign that you should just DNF it and, like, you know, spare yourself the pain. The first one is Die kalten Sekunden bei Remigiusz Mróz. This is a translation, like a German translation from Polish. If you translate the title directly into English, it would be something like The Cold Seconds. I read 50 pages of this, which is a surprising amount. No. It's in first-person perspective, which, if you have been watching any of my videos, I'm not the biggest fan of anyway. It does not invite any tension whatsoever, which is very weird for a thriller, because I have expectations of my thrillers, and this did not meet a single one of them. And we started the book out on, like, the very first pages with a graphic rape scene of the protagonist's wife, who then subsequently vanishes. That's, like, the plot of the book is that we have, what's his name again? Damian Werner, and he loses his fiancée Eva, the person this happens to. But at some point she appears again on, like, pictures that people have taken and he goes on this wild search to try and find her. I got to the introduction of that plot point, and then at that point I was like, I'm not enjoying myself. Why am I still reading this? The point of this experiment is to be able to drop these books at the top of a hat if I don't like them. So that's what I did. I'm giving this to my mom because she was curious to see, and she is, like, the bigger thriller reader of the two of us, so this could either go horribly right or horribly wrong, depending on whether or not her experience with thrillers is going to make her enjoy this more or less than I did. So, we'll see. And the second one I, well, tried to read and then I think like at 100 or so pages decided it just wasn't happening, is Tiger Man by Nick Harkaway. It has the exact same title in English as well. This is, however, the German translation, and it's a sci-fi, I don't know how else to say it, and it's set on this island that was used for, like, governmental experiments, and ever since then the very active volcano soup underneath the island has been transformed into a volcanic toxic thing and it threatens to like overwhelm the island. The island is also kind of like fucked up, like biologically and genetically speaking and stuff like that. And we follow, I've even forgotten his name. What's his name? Lester Ferris. Lester Ferris, who used to be a soldier, is now, you know, enjoying his pension on that island, and we're kind of like following him, and there's like conspiracies going on and stuff like that. I was not feeling it. It very much was written, like purposefully written in a way to be like somewhat obscure, I suppose, and weird, and with the whole environmental stuff, it did kind of remind me of, what's it called, Area X by Jeff Vandermeer, which is a trilogy that I highly enjoyed. And I feel like maybe if I read this in English I might actually get it more, I don't know. But the German translation was not doing it for me. The book also, you can't really see it, but it has a very weird format where it's broader than a normal paperback, and for some reason that threw me off as well. And so I was like, I'm reading these specifically to see if I want to keep them or not. No. I'm not putting my poor head through this anymore. So, there we go. Second DNF of the month. It happens. And now we're gonna go through the books that I actually finished in the month of September. Well, the ones that I didn't already talk about in the first part of my wrap-up videos, which I'm obviously also going to be linking. I'm going to need my phone for that because I think there's 3 books on there that I don't have with me physically. And I will forget about them if I don't have them on a list somewhere, because my brain is not working. This cold is not great. So I'm just gonna grab these, like the ones I have physically, and I'm gonna grab my phone, and we're gonna see what I can even talk about. I'm probably gonna go from like the ones I liked the most, the least to the ones I liked the most, and we're gonna start with a perhaps slightly controversial one. I honestly don't know. I think a part of the fan base is very much, you know, they know. And the rest of the fan base is people I don't want to associate with anyway. I'm talking about Dune by Frank Herbert. I finally read it, I did it. It was surprisingly readable. Like I expected the writing style to be worse because so many people have said that Dune is like super complicated to get into. I didn't think that was the case, but it's horribly orientalist, it's horribly misogynistic. I'm going to make a whole video on this book, don't worry about that. It will come at some point when I have recovered slightly from my cold and don't feel like my head is stuffed full of cotton anymore. I gave it 1.5 stars because, yeah. I mostly read it because I wanted to see what it's all about, because, you know, it's such a staple of the, like, fantasy sci-fi, mostly sci-fi, but, you know, there's also people arguing that it's fantasy, so, like, SFF community, I feel like at this point, if you want to read Dune as, like, some sort of experiment, I'd recommend it. If you want to read Dune for, like, interesting plot and characters, don't. I just don't. That's my 2 cents on Dune. So we're just gonna put that aside. And look at it again when it's time for the rant review. Right, next one. So if we go with stars, I think, yes, the next one I don't have physically because I got it from the library, and that is Spellbound by F.T. Lukens. This was a urban fantasy queer romance, basically. And I really enjoyed it. It was really cute. There was some stuff, especially towards the end, that I wasn't the biggest fan of because I thought that it kind of like brushed off some of the issues that our protagonists had gone through this entire time. And basically we follow, oh god, I've forgotten names. Hang on, let me look at that. We follow Rook, who wants to be an apprentice to a magician, but he doesn't really have any magic of its own, and he cannot really see ley lines, which is kind of like where magicians get their power from. But he has invented a machine with which he can see that, like he's made a program, essentially. So it also talks a tiny bit about like accessibility of magic, I suppose, which I found really interesting. The book is not very long, but for its length it did make a surprisingly good amount of points. The romance was really cute. It's basically this like rivals to lovers, grumpy sunshine kind of thing. So like, is it anything super special? No, but it was really adorable and I really enjoyed it. So if you're looking for like an easy, fun, gay YA romance read, I highly recommend this one actually, because it's just a lot of fun, and we love it when books are fun, don't we? Right, what's the next one? Actually, I think we're gonna go, yeah. Okay, so this one I couldn't log on Storygraph because they don't have it right now, but we have Kilig, which is a collection of romance short stories, like drawn romance short stories from Philippine authors and artists. I have this because my girlfriend actually wrote one of the stories in there and they sent me a copy of this, which is really, really cute. Okay, so me and my camera ran into some issues with the buffering data, whatever, I don't know. I googled how to resolve it and it should be fine now, but as I was saying, for the 5th time at this point, oh god, Kilig is a compilation of romantic short stories from Philippine authors, illustrated by Philippine artists, and I really enjoyed my time with it. Some of the stories I liked a lot more than others, which is to be expected with short stories, I feel like, especially if they're collections from different authors. There's just going to be some that you vibe more with than others. Some of them were incredibly beautiful, so if you have a chance to pick this up, I highly recommend doing it. You're going to support independent authors, you're going to support independent artists, and you get a beautiful copy of a book. So, you know. I marked 2 of the stories because they are almost entirely in Tagalog, which I don't speak nor read, so I'm going to go back there and translate them for myself, because I would really like to know what they say, and the pictures didn't help fully. So I guess we're gonna learn Tagalog. Done. That's that's what we're gonna do. Alright. I think I have 3 more. I think. Let me check Storygraph real quick, because Storygraph should be able to tell me what I have left. Yes! Okay, so I have 3 left, 2 of which I have with me physically. So we're gonna start with one of them because I also gave it 4.5 stars if I remember correctly, and that was Stalking Darkness by Lynn Flavelling. This is the 2nd book in the Night Runner series, which is an older gay fantasy series, and I have 5, I think there's 7 books and like a short story collection or something, and I finished book 2 in because I had book 1 on my TBR and I was like, you know, it's fine, I'm not gonna continue on with the series like a liar, and then I did continue on with the series. So I think I remarked upon this, that book 1 in my wrap-up video for the first half of the month. I remarked that book 1 was very fast-paced and like a lot of info dumpy stuff going on, which I'm not the biggest fan of. And I think book 2 did remedy that in a way, which just goes to prove that Lynn Flavelling used the first book to set up as much of the world as she possibly could. And then when, yeah, now that you know the basics, we can actually do some plot. We had more POVs in this than I remember in the first one, which I actually really enjoyed because it made the world feel a bit more well-rounded. It was surprisingly brutal. Like, our main character just casually gets tortured, like psychologically tortured, for the, like, 2nd half of the book. No biggie. He's definitely not at all traumatized. But at least the gay romance is happening, so like, you know, you win some, you lose a lot, I don't know. But I really enjoyed my time with this, and I'm really excited to continue on with the series. It's probably not going to happen in October because I am quite busy with my TBR, but still, I'm really happy to have picked up the series. And I am really excited to read more about my horribly traumatized gay men, because what do we read fiction for if not for horribly traumatized gay men? Nice. The second to last, which I don't have with me physically because I borrowed it from a friend when I was at her place, by which I mean I just read it at her place, is the first volume of Frieren, which is a Japanese manga. I'm gonna put the cover up here probably. And I really, really, really enjoyed this one. It's basically, I like it because it has a very different approach to the whole like fantasy and adventure setting than a lot of other manga, anime, and like in general fantasy media has. Because instead of following a adventurer who is actually doing their part or whatever, we follow Frieren, who is an elf or a half-elf, after she and her group of friends have defeated the big bad evil guy. And the reason it is still incredibly interesting is because Frieren as a half-elf or elf doesn't age like other people do. And so a lot of the story basically just follows her journey of learning what loss means, and age, and death. Because she has this thing where she will like disappear for 50 years and then she will come back to her companions and be like, I was just gone for 50 years, what do you mean most of you are old men by now? It was very heartwarming. It's like very slice of lifey in a lot of ways, but it was very heartwarming and I really loved it, and I'm so excited for the anime to premiere. I think next month, actually. Really excited for that, because I can't wait to see some of those scenes animated. I'm really, really excited for that. So we're gonna do the one that I liked the most last, and that was Identity by Mitu Sanyal. There is an English translation of this, so to all of my English, you know, followers and so on and so forth, you can actually get this. Please do. This is a literary fiction book. I've already read something by the author this month, in September actually, which is very funny. That was an actual non-fiction. This is not non-fiction. It is, however, inspired by real-life events. Identity is about a professor at the Düsseldorf University of the Heinrich-Heine-Universität by the name Saraswati, who, as the name suggests, should be Indian. But as we learn relatively early in the book, because as I said, this is kind of like, it's kind of like the whole point, she's actually not Indian, but she used to be a white German woman who had extensive surgery done to look and pass as an Indian woman. And obviously this is a huge thing, not just because of race swapping, but also because she is a professor for post-colonial studies. And we get to see the entire debacle unfold through the eyes of Nivedita, who is a, I believe, Polish-Indian student at the university who struggles a lot with what is happening, specifically with Saraswati. And the book is based on a real-life event where a white woman, I believe, pretended to be a black woman in the United States, if I remember that correctly. But it's set in Germany. There's a different race situation going on because she's not trying to pass as a black woman, but as an Indian woman. But I do believe that, you know, Mitu Sanyal says that this is the inspiration as well, so like, you know, it's all there. And I really, really loved this book. Sarah recommended it to me from Voyage the Word, so I'm not surprised that I loved it this much. It's a very hard read, because it follows Saraswati's reasoning, and it's this very bizarre thing where you listen to her speak and you're like you have points, but the way you're presenting those points is so incredibly manipulative and gaslighting. And the book doesn't pretend to have an easy answer. It also doesn't, like, I don't know how to phrase that. It's not one of those books that, like, spells out who's in the right and who's in the wrong. I suppose that's the easiest way of putting it. It's very obvious that we're not supposed to agree with Saraswati and what she's doing, but the book very much talks about the difficulties of having a conversation about race, especially as a construct, right? And how just because it is a societal construct doesn't mean it's not real, and how those things can be very difficult to navigate, both in real life, but also, you know, at university, during a field of studies, specifically trying to talk about the subject. And it was a really good read. I gave it 5 stars. I kind of immediately knew I was going to give it 5 stars. It was very hard to stomach sometimes, though, because as I said, you keep on listening to Sarasvati and you keep on going, you have a point, but like not in the way you think you do. And there's so many situations when Nivedita is trying to argue with Sarasvati, and whatever she's doing, Sarasvati manages to turn that argument against her in all the wrong ways. So, like, if I was in a room with Sarasvati, I would just start crying immediately because there's no way to argue against her. The author also included, like, Twitter messages of people, like, talking about the situation, and the really interesting thing in the author's note, she said that she asked actual people to kind of, like, weigh in on what they would say if a situation like the Sarasvati situation in Germany was actually real. So I personally think that's what gave the, like, Twitter threads and messages that every once in a while popped up in the book that special feeling, because it wasn't just written by one person. It was basically a group project, at least for those parts. There's also, like, a few statements that, like, university professors made about the whole situation, where she actually asked university professors to talk about that. There's interviews with famous people that exist in real life where Mitu Sanya basically said that she took what these people had said in a similar context, but obviously not with, like, for example, Sarasvati, who is a fictional figure, and she basically took what those people said in interviews that were related to the subject that this book had them play in, and just kind of, like, translated that into the book. So it very much felt like a group project at times, which I really, really loved, because it gave the book this certain depth that I really appreciated. So if you're looking for something like that, again, be warned, this is not an easy book, and I can imagine that especially if you are a person of color, you might find it even harder to stomach, for very understandable reasons. For especially German speakers who want to check this book out, very short warning, it also talks about the Hanau incident. For anyone who's not from Germany and doesn't know what I'm talking about, I don't remember in which year it happened, but Hanau was where an armed perpetrator shot down several people with, like, migrational background, or visible migrational background. That's a whole different thing again, right? It was a very big deal in Germany, actually, because, you know, we don't have that many firearm situations usually. So yeah, go into that prepared that this is going to crop up at some point, because I want you to be safe. Apart from that, as I said, there's a lot of really hard discussions in this book. There's a lot of, like, weaponizing white guilt, very weird talking points about, you know, well, you wanted me to give up my privilege, so I gave up the privilege of being white, so now I'm no longer white, that kind of thing, right? That's what's happening in this book. So I highly, highly recommend it. Just be prepared, you know, that's all I'm saying. So yeah, I also really love my edition because it's so incredibly colorful. I absolutely adore it. It's really, really pretty. So yeah, that was all I actually read in September. I started the month out really strong, and then, like, towards the end I just kind of, like, sagged, which it happens. I'm going to try and cut these parts together to the best of my abilities without my camera doing some weird shit again, please and thank you. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of the books that I've read and what you think about them, or, like, what you thought about them. Let me also know in the comments down below if there's any books I mentioned that you still want to read, or that you now want to read because I kind of put them on your TBR. Oops, sorry in advance. And as always, I hope that you have a nice reading experience yourself, and that you will continue having a nice reading experience. And I will see you soon.